Hello everyone, my name is Xiomara and today I will be demonstrating how to do the dry point intaglio process. So right now I'm just going through the materials. You'll need watercolor paper, plexiglass, a spatula, gloves, Sharpie, tape, aqua colored ink, cheesecloth, a spray bottle, a sponge, and some newspaper. So this right here is the press that I am going to be using. It is one of the smaller ones, but right now, as you can see, I've traced the watercolor paper and the plexiglass so that the outcome of the print will be straight. Right here, I'm going to be running the press through the watercolor paper and the plate just to see the pressure and to see if it needs more pressure or less pressure. So right here you're going to be seeing the paper already gone through the press, and if there are indents in the paper, like as you can see in mine, then that means your pressure is good and you are ready to print. So right here it's just a quick rundown of me inking the plate and wiping it off with some newspaper, but I'm going to be talking about the process of getting your plate ready. So basically my plate was an 8x10. And we used a scribe in order to scratch out our image. We first had to print our image, and if there were writings on it, it of course had to be flipped, because if it weren't, then the letters were going to come out backwards in your final print. So once you've printed out the image, you tape it to the back of your plexiglass and you start to scratch the surface. The deeper your scratches, the more ink that will go into it, and the less scratches, then the less ink that will be in your print. You also want to make sure that once you start printing that there is no dust or any excess of the scratching that you've done beforehand, because if there is, then it will affect your print, since they are little particles and they might come out in the final print or mess up with the ink. So here I'm going to be using cheesecloth to wipe any excess ink because cheesecloth is a lot more absorbent than the newspaper, and it also just helps in getting more of those details in your final print. So right here we're going to be starting the wetting and damping process of the paper. So basically you're going to need a spray bottle and a sponge in order to do this. So you're going to want to spray enough water on the paper for it to be damp enough, but then you're going to use a sponge in order to get off any of the excess water that is on it, in order for it not to be super soaking wet but damp enough so that the ink will pass onto the paper when you pass it through the press. So the next step is going to want to be to finally make your print. So you're going to get your damp watercolor paper and your plexiglass and put it on the alignment that we had made and I showed earlier. So you're going to want to put the plexiglass, and then you put the watercolor paper on top of it, and then you're going to get some craft paper and let that be the first layer of your on top of your paper. And after that you're going to want to, there's a close-up of how it should be aligned, and as you're going to see later, you're going to want to put the blankets that you need on top of the watercolor paper in order to give it that enough pressure under the press. After you pass it through the press, you're going to want to get some paper tabs in order for your fingerprints not to transfer onto the watercolor paper. And then as you can see here, this is how my final print came out. I could have used some extra wiping in some areas, but overall I'm fairly happy with it.